The last year, all said and done, has been a bit shit, hasn't it? I'm Tommy Thompson, this is Design Dive, and at the time of writing, it's been around a year since the first steps taken by the British government to try and mitigate against the outbreak of the coronavirus. While I'll put my issues with the quality of our government's response to the pandemic aside, although between this and the EU thing, the UK is pretty much the Google Stadia of countries at this point. It's really been a year in which we've all worked to support one another and try to find any and all mechanisms to stay sane, and at least even bring a wee sparkle of joy back into our day-to-day. And I hope you're all doing well and coping as best you can given the circumstances wherever you are in the world. Speaking from my own perspective, running this channel, while I did do some stuff to help maintain a sense of community, we opened up part of the Discord server to the public, as well as streaming a little more on Twitch, I've actually really tried to just stay the course and do what I do in an effort to bring some familiarity or normality to proceedings. Throughout 2020, I tried to keep the real world out of the day-to-day of what this channel is about, given that each episode of AI in Games is designed to be educational. Lacing it with references to what's happening out there can be distracting and also date the work in some respects. That isn't to say I haven't been affected by all this. Folks have contracted the virus, suffered long-term health issues, or even died in my social circles. My work and income took a beating at one point, and of course my mental health has been about as sturdy as a waifu's outfit in a JRPG. But for me, it was important that a new episode bring a sense of normality. Oh look, Tommy's back with a new episode about the AI of something. It's why until last month I didn't even write an episode of Design Dive for almost a year, with the last episode of this series prior to that being the video on Doom 64 released around a year ago. But yes, back to the point, it's all been pure f***. So playing games either to make new videos or to keep me sane has been a big part of my life, and no doubt for a lot of yourselves as well. Last month I posted in the community tab on YouTube to find out what games you'd all been playing to help keep you going. And there's some familiar themes of connecting with friends and family, returning to old favourites, or finding a new game that really holds you for much of the year. And so this episode is something of a personal one. I want to talk about the games that have followed me around 2020 and into 2021, and use it as a mechanism to have a discussion with you all in the comments about the games that have been by your side throughout the past year. So let's get into it. Looking back, it's not easy to paint a picture of my gaming year. To give you a little inside baseball, a good chunk of my gaming hours are often committed to new episodes of this show. So taking that into consideration, I've played every game covered on the show since last April, plus all the games covered on my review channel Smoke and Mirrors, and the myriad of titles that appeared in AI 101, and of course a wee bit of Cyberpunk 2077 for the previous Design Dive episode. And much of this video is dedicated to the games that won't necessarily make their way into the channel, given that as much as I love a good AI in a game, games where my research is not the focus is a really nice reprieve for me. Heaven forbid I actually have fun playing games or anything. But to take a quick moment to address the games I have covered on the channel in the past year, the three that I enjoyed the most are Splinter Cell Blacklist, Cities Skylines, and BPM Bullets Per Minute. Blacklist, while a little dated now, still holds up for the most part, and I do appreciate a well put together stealth game that gives me a bit of freedom to explore the world as I see fit. Cities Skylines, after the episode launched, was quite refreshing and relaxing, given it allowed me to sit and enjoy it a little more, rather than rush around trying to build stuff so it would look good in the video. Plus, as pointed out over on Smoke and Mirrors, BPM is a game that, once you get into the groove, is incredibly satisfying, and it's great to see the game is still being updated and going strong. I guess the first thing to tackle is revisiting the backlog, that ugly collection of games but all meaning to get around to that is often much larger than we'd care to admit. And I have to admit, I didn't clear as much of it as I'd hoped. Xbox Game Pass is both wonderful and horrible, in that it allows you to try out so many titles you might not have otherwise, and it really just adds to your paralysis. But some notable titles from the backlog, for good or ill. First up, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 from Capcom, a nice slice of ridiculous storytelling meant to interweave the events of Resi 5 and 6, and it just left me more confused than when I started. Also, Revelations 2 is not designed to be played by yourself, it's clearly a co-op game and it shows at times. Like the invisible enemies that Barry has to shoot that only the wee girl can see, that can just get in the sea, what the hell? Replaying Transformers Fall of Cybertron by High Moon Studios was an absolute joy, and sadly if you don't own it already, finding a copy of it can be really difficult. I finally played Capcom's weird $60 anime movie with QuickTime events masquerading as a video game, Asura's Wrath. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, I freaking loved it. Gears Tactics My Splash Damage, which is straight up XCOM but Gears of War, and if you're a fan of either of those franchises, it deserves a moment of your time. It achieves this wonderful balance of rebuilding all of the gameplay mechanics of Gears of War into a turn-based format, whilst also maintaining the tension XCOM is known for by reproducing many of the AI behaviours in the regular Gears games. It sits alongside Creative Assembly's Halo Wars 2 as another fantastic reproduction of an Xbox franchise in a completely different genre, and I think it's not given the credit it's due. The Dark Pictures anthology, with Supermassive Games experimenting with different versions of horror storytelling, while still trying to recapture the magic of Until Dawn and not quite reaching it. The double dose of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 by Team Ninja, and Marvel's The Avengers with Square Enix. Two very different approaches to multiplayer-focused action RPGs using famous Marvel characters that somehow both do a disservice to the IP in their own unique ways. That said, Ultimate Alliance is still the better game of the two. The 2 seasons of the Batman Telltale games, the first of which presents an interesting spin on existing comic characters, while the second f***s it up with a weak Joker storyline, and neither of them gave me the option to save Martha. Thankfully, I also played PS4's Spider-Man by Insomniac, which catered to all of my needs for a solid comic book video game. Thank Christ. Hopefully we'll talk about that in a future video. Exmorph Defense by Exor Studios, a quirky top-down shooter tower defense hybrid that forces the player to rebalance defenses between waves and sometimes deform the territory in order to get the win. Great game. The 2 games in the Ori series, Blind Forest and Will-o'-the-Wisps, which are gorgeous-looking Metroidvanias. Bethel Games' shorts have been great Sunday afternoon games, and Solitaire Conspiracy has such a gorgeous aesthetic I keep coming back to it. A wee shout out to Observation by Scottish studio No Code, whose weird and ominous storytelling brought something unique to the genre. Oh, and before I forget, Doom Eternal. I still have a lot of mixed thoughts about this one, but given this has been a period of frustration and more critically, a period where we need a little patience as we wait for the world to simmer down a bit, I realised a lot of the games I'm playing are built around repetition, of the need for overcoming odds and learning from failure. While I played a fair bit upon initial release, 2020 was the year I really dug into Motion Twin's Dead Cells. While I've always been fond of roguelikes such as Spelunky for its simple mechanics but layers of interesting dynamics, it's a game I've never really been able to enjoy as much as I'd like. However, Dead Cells' tight combat combined with the Metroidvania and roguelike properties draws me back to it again and again. Plus the new additions made over the past year or so, the Bad Seed and Fatal Falls DLC, continue to add new enemy archetypes and recombine existing ones in new and challenging ways. It's still proving to be a fun and exciting game, even now with a couple of boss cells under my belt, and it's great to know that even with around 40 hours already invested, there are still new things for me to find. And while I am now beginning to get more into Supergiant's Hades, and must acknowledge it is quite a thirsty experience, it's yet to really take hold of me in the same way that Dead Cells has to date. And of course, if we're going to talk about survival and perseverance, an honorary mention must be given to Dark Souls. Sadly, though, instead of playing the next Soulsborne on my backlog, and sorry if you're still waiting for the next episode of that Design Dive sub-series, I found myself playing a bunch of Souls-likes instead. From the likes of Jedi Fallen Order to Lords of the Fallen and The Surge to Darksiders 3. I became quite obsessed with these games for a while in order to explore the attempts at evoking the design traits of the Souls series in other titles, and whether they succeed or fail, not just in replicating what makes Dark Souls work, but retaining their own identity along the way. Maybe that's a video in and of itself at some point. Let me know if you want to see that one. But conversely, for every game that I want to take me to task, I'm also looking for something to help disconnect me from everything else and just go with the flow. And particularly in the context of AI in games, it becomes a weird nook in my gaming establishment where I crave dumb AI that can only catch me by surprise in overwhelming numbers. It's a very small subset, I might add, dominated almost exclusively by the likes of Earth Defense Force and Hyrule Warriors, and also of course a shout out to Fire Emblem Warriors, plus the aforementioned Exmorph. But there's something to be said for the almost mindless escapism it provides. But while I'm slowly clearing the backlog, more recently I've been conscious of the types of games I typically don't play, and going out of my way to try and connect with them a little more. A point I made in my recent gaming discourse video is that I often approach games from an emotionally detached perspective, and that's led to sourcing games out that have perhaps had little impact upon me personally over the years, but they clearly have an audience that adores them. Much like every other Switch owner, I dabbled in Animal Crossing for the first time with New Horizons back in April, and while I still don't quite resonate with that game the way others do, I still put over 40 hours into feeding Tom Nook's capitalist nightmare. Plus, right around the same time, I finished up Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. I've never finished a Pokemon game, and prior to now, I had never bought one either. Pokemon was a franchise that kinda passed me by during my teens. Having now played through the entire campaign, I do see why people really get caught up in these titles. The affinity we build with our own wee troop of pocket monsters is pretty strong. Like furry XCOM soldiers, I guess. I'm now eyeing the recently announced Pokemon Arceus with great interest, plus I'm now in the midst of checking out other stuff, like actually playing and completing a Fire Emblem game with 3 houses. I'm revisiting Final Fantasy for the first time in almost 30 years by playing Final Fantasy 15. Plus, I'm keen to check out Persona next, all the while staring at the Yakuza series and not knowing where the f to even start. But probably the franchise that's really turned around in my mind this past year has been Monster Hunter. Those of you who follow me on Twitch will know I've been streaming Monster Hunter World in recent months, and I finally get it now. I actually played Monster Hunter Ultimate 3 on the 3DS way back in around 2012, and I really didn't get along with it. But between the more streamlined and relatively more accessible systems in World, combined with the lovely people in our Discord server giving me advice, I'm finally able to tell apart a Rathian from a Rathalos, and I'm currently trying to stop myself ordering Monster Hunter Rise for the Switch, but my resolve is slowly breaking down. There are a lot of small but interesting things to appreciate in Monster Hunter World, as the endemic life really helps give nuance to the larger open world design, while the actual hunting of monsters can prove to be a fun layer of exploration, not to mention the flexibility and variety in their behaviours and attack patterns. Many of you have asked for an episode on this channel about Monster Hunter over the years, and while I don't have enough research materials for the main show yet, there's certainly a design dive video in there somewhere. Bringing it over to multiplayer, personally I love playing co-op, given the idea of players working together to fight off the enemy AI is something I've always enjoyed. But the thing is, I love couch co-op more than anything, which has made the past year all that much worse. Playing the likes of Gears of War or Earth Defense Force, 2 games I love playing with friends, doesn't quite have the same allure when it's entirely online. Even fighting games, which used to be a mainstay of my gaming life, have faded away as I just don't like playing them online. But arguably, the one game I have played the most in couch co-op is actually Jurassic World Evolution. My wife and I enjoy crafting our theme parks together and bringing new dinosaurs into the park despite the chaos they may well create down the line. The dinosaurs appear to operate on relatively simple behavioural triggers based on needs and wants that their personalities detail at any given time, but it's surprisingly still quite fun. It's a shame that the game isn't actually multiplayer, as we each found our respective roles in the management of our parks. I handle the logistics, make sure the parks are going to turn a profit, and fix the issues with path networks, electricity, and achieving new unlocks. Meanwhile, my partner is far more focused on the well-being of the dinosaurs themselves, and is always happy to see a new dinosaur enter the park, and wants to ensure they're all living happy and healthy lives. Which I guess means I'm Bryce Dallas Howard and my wife is Chris Pratt? As I speak, our parks are now teeming with glorious dino cows, munching on leaves, and it's still a lovely world to return to on a quiet evening. It's this social element that's really drove a lot of my gaming time throughout the year. I have very few friends that live nearby, and my family are nowhere close. So games have been a mechanism for me to maintain a social life, but the focus has shifted somewhat, with an emphasis on actually socialising and catching up, which means that the game itself can really become secondary, but quite often I find we move towards co-op games rather than getting too caught up in PvP. It's no surprise I finally became a pirate legend in Sea of Thieves in the past year, given it's a great game to have stuff to do together while giving you the space to have a chat, catch up, dick about, and generally just hang around in the same social spaces. Ironically, in a sea full of other thieves, that's usually the part where the games become more frustrating. I've not had a positive experience of dealing with other crews in Sea of Thieves for close to a year now, and sadly there are still groups figuring out how to use hacks and exploits, and I'm really grateful when I enter a server that's clearly empty with the exception of perhaps the odd sloop on the horizon. I'd much rather face off against skeleton galleons and pirate lords, even if my friends and I just make a right arse of it. More recently, we've actually pivoted to Deep Rock Galactic by Ghost Ship Games. Released in early access back in 2018 with a full release in 2020, it's essentially a mixture of the team-based combat and objectives in Left 4 Dead with the procedural world-building elements of Minecraft. Each drop has players exploring open procedurally generated cave systems full of minerals and ugly anthropoid aliens which need to be shot in the face many times. It's a slightly more focused alternative than Sea of Thieves, but it nonetheless provides that space to hang out and chat with one another whilst also slowly working towards a specific objective. And these aren't the only games that have become our focal points, with a shout out to my wee communities for Dead by Daylight and Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 is strangely therapeutic as you go around painting ink everywhere, while Dead by Daylight, I always play as a survivor, as I'm more interested in that teamwork dynamic than stabbing teenagers. Hell, there's even that evening we tried playing Ark Survival Evolved, and I was so enraged by the UX design I decided I never wanted to waste my time with it again. But one of the two games that has really defined much of my pandemic life is actually Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Back in March of 2020, George Osborne, not that one, suggested to a few of his pals in the UK games industry that we should try and arrange a session of Mario Kart, perhaps once or twice a week, as something to pass the time. In fact, I decided to write this episode of Design Dive as something of a celebration of the 1-year anniversary of our first match together. We've pretty much went through the gamut of the Mario Kart experience, which, in hindsight, I realise lines up very much with the 5 stages of grief. There's the phase of denial, where as every new person joins, you realise you're not quite as good at this game as you thought you were. The anger that comes from somehow holding off everyone for a lap and a half, only for a blue shell, 2 red ones, a bullet bill and a piranha plant to knock you from 1st to 10th on the final straight, the bargaining with myself and others, and that I truly deserve that first place position if it weren't for the lightning bolt, the blue shell, Isaac hitting me with that invincibility star, and the legitimate talent and ability of the 11 other people in the race. The depression of looking at our spreadsheet. Yeah, that's right kids, we have a spreadsheet. And acknowledging you're consistently getting worse over time. And lastly, acceptance, as you come to realise you're never going to truly experience joy ever again. But really, at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, what I take away from it all is that it's not about the game really. It's about fostering a sense of community and making everyone feel accepted and happy, or even at least a wee bit less miserable. I suspect many of them are like me and that we're long past the point where the game is even fun anymore. Except for Ren and Lucas maybe. It's driving us all a little bit nuts, but we're going insane together, and that's about as in vogue with 2021 as anyone can be. I've made new friends in this wee community of ours, and they're all a lovely bunch. But I swear to God, the next one of them who votes for Cheeseland is going to rue the day they ever cross my path in person. But I guess the games I've really latched onto are those that provide a sense of exploration, where I have a world in front of me that I can go out and investigate. I mean, in general, I tend to have at least one open world game in my active playlist at any one time. These are often a culmination of mindless wandering, but also with some focus and a means to chip away against a larger set of objectives. That said, you really shouldn't play more than one at any time, as typically only one takes hold and the others lose out. I did make that mistake late last year where I had Assassin's Creed Origins, Witcher 3 and Far Cry 5, because they all appeared in the AI 101 video on directors, only to then start playing Watch Dogs Legion for that feature-length episode with Ubisoft. Legion was especially weird given it's a game set in a place that I find myself in frequently, though while I say frequently, I haven't been back in the city for a year now. Even though it's a scaled reproduction, there was a strange comfort in the familiarity of it. Retracing paths I'd walk through the city to visit friends or even go to work. But it's not just about the exploration of virtual spaces, it's also about finding new ways to explore game worlds and mechanics. Hitman 3 arriving when it did is not just a wonderful excuse to play around through the new campaign, but rather, as I have done, go back and revisit the completed campaigns of the first 2 games and remind myself of well-worn tactics as well as finding new ones. This entire trilogy has been a great toolbox for players to experiment and explore ideas, and often find a variety of awkward, suboptimal but still perfectly valid routes towards eliminating targets. However, looking back on everything I've mentioned in this video, if there's one game that has defined my year in lockdown, it's the one that allowed for that desire of exploration to really take hold. I still remember my first day playing Breath of the Wild in April of last year. I spent 8 hours in this broken yet beautiful Hyrule, an open world with no quest markers. A clearly defined goal, but my objectives felt fluid and unknown. In many respects, Breath of the Wild is a game that takes so many of the same ideas and tropes of open world game design, but finds new mechanisms to present it to the player. The markers on the map are gone. You decide what the areas of interest are. Shrines and Korok seeds are everywhere. You can literally spend half an hour in any region and just be tripping over them left and right. But the onus is on exploration and discovery. It's a game that, through clever visual direction and environmental storytelling, it so deftly communicates ideas to the player as it guides you through the world in ways that you're not even consciously aware, only to reach the end of this path that you've taken and discover something of value. The game rewards you for following your curiosities. There is of course a vastly understated but actually well put together systemic AI system in here as well, with some reasonably well put together combat and stealth systems, but it's not the thing that's brought me back again and again for over 100 hours. It's a game that has an achievable end, and I don't know if I ever want to find it. I spent around 85 hours in Hyrule before even bothering to tackle the fourth and final Divine Beast. It's fascinating to me that this is a game with such a clearly defined path for speedrunners, and yet my experience has been so decompressed and built on the idea of exploration and freedom of purpose. I'm still finding new things in this game, new dynamics, new places, new perspectives. It's simply transcendent. Games are fun, in theory, but in many ways they are, like any hobby in media, a source of relief. They can be a bonus to an already fantastic day, or the support that gets you through a terrible one. They can be the thing that takes our mind off the pressures that bear down on us, or be the thing that brings us together wherever we are in the world. Right now it feels like so many of us are divided, in perspective, in belief, in towns and cities, trapped in homes and doing what we can to stave off an even more horrible outcome. But we find our own solace in our own wee favourite corners. Reading through everyone's comments, it's great to hear so many of your own stories, of how you reconnected with an older game, doubled down on a newfound love, or spent hours with friends and family exploring something together. It's these bonds that really help define gaming at its best, and from my community to yours, I wish you all the very best, and would love to hear more about your lockdown games.